Welcome inside another edition of IndyStar Preps Weekly. My name is Brian Haenchen. That's Akeem, Glaspie, Kyle, Neddenriep. We're back together in person for the same time, coming to you not live from Decatur Central High School. We're here for reasons that are undisclosed. How are you boys doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Akeem?
How are you doing?
Good, yeah, it feels good. The nice sun in my face, so yeah, everything's good.
Sun in the face is a nice touch, but it's good to be back with you guys. Our first show in person since last season. Is this our first one since what? The Roncalli show, maybe?
I think so. Yeah, we had the live show at Roncalli. It was a lot of fun, and we decided to come out to Decatur this week and do it on the football field. And thanks up front here for Decatur Central letting us in here this morning to do the show.
Yeah, absolutely. They rolled out the red carpet. They knew Akeem was coming. They've heard what Akeem is doing in the picks contest we'll get to at the end of the show. But before we get to that, let's talk about our games last week. Akeem, let's talk to you since we're at Decatur Central. They played at New Pal last week, right? And it wasn't too much of a contest.
No, I'll start with Decatur Central. I mean, they obviously have a freshman quarterback in Bo Polston, and they were playing from behind pretty much the entire game, so that put a lot on his shoulders, and they couldn't really get the passing game going. I mean, they had some explosive plays from time to time, but no consistency, no running game. New Pal's defense really bowed up, and the secondary played well at New Pal with 2 interceptions, and including a pick six. So it was just tough slating for Decatur Central. I mean, the talent is there. Obviously, the scheme looks great, and when everything's clicking well, you can see the potential there with Bo Polston. But I definitely think they need some time to kind of work the kinks out a little bit. And right now, I think it would be tough for anyone to look good against New Pal with the way that they're playing. Talking to Coach Ralph after the game, I mean, he gave me the cliche, we're just worried about one game, but I think it's safe to say that New Pal is back based off, the 8-4 season they had last year, which would be great at a lot of places, but at New Pal, that's just not really the standard that they set. So, I mean, talking to Coach, he said 2 days after they lose to Cathedral in the playoffs, they're trying to get into the weight room. They're ready to go. They're ready to wash that taste out of their mouth and get back to playing New Pal football. And Daniel Tippett, the new quarterback there, is a really good kind of quarterback or point guard in a way in that offense. Not the biggest guy, but he can run a little bit. He always seems to be on time with his throws and passes, reading the defense well, and he had 2 touchdowns against Decatur Central. And week 1, he showed his arm with that fake punt touchdown pass, so he gives them a new element. And then obviously Grayson Thomas is the one who's kind of the bell cow, just a big bruiser with a lot of speed. And that offensive line, I've already wrote about them. They could possibly be one of the best in the state with 2 kind of 4-star offensive linemen there. So yeah, New Pal is definitely a team to worry about, I think.
Do you see any improvements or changes between week 1, week 2 with New Pal?
Yeah, I think they're getting better on defense. They're really playing as a cohesive unit. I mean, just, again, the secondary, the way they all move together in unison, all the deep passes are kind of covered well. The secondary is never out of kind of phase there. It's kind of hard to beat them deep, so you're going to have to really be on your P's and Q's to get a big play and just to get consistent positive yardage against New Pal in general. So they're just a really well-coached team right now, and I just, like Kyle said, looking forward on that schedule, it might be outside of Mount Vernon. It might be some time before someone really gives New Pal a game. So the talent they have is impressive.
Kyle, looking ahead now for Decatur Central, I guess for both of you guys, where does Decatur Central go from here, and how do they try to rebound from that loss?
Well, I think they'll be all right. We'll touch on this too, but 5A to me is sort of it's probably where you want to be more than 4A this year, because New Pal dropped down from 5A to 4A. Now it look like they could probably win 5A if they were still in 5A. So Decatur is in Class 5A. Cathedral had moved up. They're playing 6A. Now you got to watch out for Whiteland, which comes here Friday night and plays Decatur Central. That's a huge mid-state conference game, but I think they'll be fine. I mean, they've got some injuries too that they're getting. They'll have some guys back here, if not this week, then later in the season. So they're dealing with that a little bit too. But yeah, I think you just kind of have to flush that game. It was a running clock second half. They got out of there at least relatively early on Friday night, and now they can kind of turn the page and worry about. They've got Whiteland, Mooresville, some really good. The mid-state looks really good. Franklin is another team in 5A that's playing really well. So, there are some hurdles out there still, but, until proven differently, Decatur is probably the team to beat in that conference. And I think, 5A to me, Merrillville may be the number 1 team. They dropped down from 6A to play 5A this season. But if you look around central Indiana, I think, Whiteland, Franklin, Decatur, all those teams are going to kind of be roughly about even.
You touched on them briefly. Cathedral moving up to 6A. They played Brownsburg last week. It was a competitive game, but Brownsburg felt like was in control for most of it.
Yeah, they got out to a 21-0 lead, and part of that was they had a punt block early on, and it was a really nice call by their special teams coordinator. They had a regular punt return on. Cathedral had a delay of game penalty. All of a sudden, you see them, and I could hear it on that side of the field, the press box side. They're calling for punt block. Change the play. They end up just getting right through the wedge there and blocked it as 14-0 at that point, basically, as they go in and score. And then really felt like they controlled pretty much the rest of the way. Now, it got to be 21-14. Jaden Whitaker hit a long pass to Corey Smith, who's really starting to come on at receiver, and he goes 78 yards for a touchdown. So they go back up by 2 scores. Cathedral kind of stayed in the game. It wasn't necessarily a blowout, 42-20 at one point. And then, Danny O'Neill kind of gets them, how he can be through the air. A great pass to Dron Tibbs for a TD. Then he runs 58 yards down to the 1. They end up scoring again. So they got within a score, couldn't get the onside kick, goes out of bounds, and Brownsburg basically ran the clock out. But, yeah, it felt to me like Brownsburg kind of controlled. And Bill Peebles said it, the Cathedral coach, after the game, like, we've got to get better defense, offensive line, and special teams. So that's a lot. that's a lot of things to work on. Nobody's going to feel sorry for Cathedral either, but they do have some areas they need to get better at to be probably a state championship type of team in 6A. But they have the pieces there. Obviously, Danny O'Neill actually got hurt at the end of the game. I checked in with him yesterday, and he's going to be okay. He has got a hip pointer he's got to deal with, and those things can linger. But he plans to play and should be all right moving forward. So we'll see. Something to keep an eye on anyway. But I think Brownsburg through 2 weeks, I kept Center Grove number 1 in our power rankings, but I really feel like Brownsburg maybe have the best 2 wins, beating Ben Davis and Cathedral as anybody does right now, and including Center Grove, who has 2 good wins too. But Center Grove's number 1 until proven differently, in my opinion. But Brownsburg definitely a team to keep an eye on. I also think that Ben Davis team, once you got their quarterback playing this week, Thomas Gotkowski, and you pair him with Elijah Price at running back, that is a very good team too. And I think that sets up really interesting down the road when Ben Davis could play Brownsburg in the sectional. Those 2 teams are with each other now in the sectional, so that adds some intrigue later on. We can talk about that in 10 weeks from now or whatever it is.
The number 1 team in your power ranking, Center Grove, you mentioned them. They big win over Carmel. Really impressive performance. The game kind of turned when Eli Holt took a hit to the head, was injured. You got an update on Eli. It sounds like he's doing okay. May not play next week, but he's doing okay, which is important.
Yeah.
But Center Grove's response out of that lengthy timeout is about a 10-minute delay. Tyler Cherry throws a touchdown pass right off the bat to give them the lead in a really good back-and-forth game. Just a really impressive, gutsy type of response, and that's what you expect from a championship-caliber team. And then for the other side, Carmel, after watching them week 1 to week 2, it was sort of a night-and-day difference in a lot of respects, or just how smoothly it felt like the offense ran. Sure, there are some points left on the field. They didn't finish drives. They got the ball around midfield. For that, with a chance to take the lead at the end of regulation and couldn't pull through. They converted a 3rd down, but then, kind of fizzled from there. But I think you also got to give a lot of credit to Center Grove's defense for getting pressure on the quarterback. But some positives to be taken away there from Carmel, and I don't think you can say enough about Center Grove and just, that winner's mentality, that killer instinct type of thing, where it's just like, the rich get richer with them. There's no real drop-off despite the number of pieces that they graduated from last year. It was really impressive seeing them for the first time this year. But 2 teams that it wouldn't surprise me in the least to see them at the end playing out of Lucas Oil. So,
yeah, and Center Grove, I think, to your point, they don't have that star power, and we knew that going into the year. So this kind of goes back to Eric Moore's program, and you got all these guys who just kind of step into their new roles, and it just keeps on humming, and certainly you saw that Friday night. And
it's amazing too, like little things, like kick returns on special teams. They did such a good job. It was actually Eli Holt who returned quite a few kicks back there, getting them good field position to start off drives, and almost broke off a couple for touchdowns. Just things like that obviously defensively, offense sort of speaks for themselves, but it's the little things. And then the same thing could be said for Carmel, where their punter did a great job of pinning Center Grove back at the 2-yard line on multiple occasions. He had one that hit right smack at the goal line, bounced out and back towards the 5 and pinned him back, and they got the ball back on a turnover on down. So little things like that. Something interesting that I passed along to you, and I think you mentioned in your story, but it's just that the mentality that Carmel has, where when they're getting a short field because their defense did a good job of holding them and then forcing the offense to get a short field after the punt, the mentality is really great. The energy is up. When it's the other way around and Carmel's having to drive the entire field, he said that he can tell that there's kind of just that letdown mentally, where the good feelings aren't, generated as much. You don't have those good positive, neutrons or whatever firing in your brain. So he has to find a way. They have to find a way to stay more even keel and have that same energy no matter the situation. So that'll be interesting to see how that team grows in that respect. But again, I mean, you can see it through 2 weeks. You can just see the pieces with both teams as to why they're favored to win or get back to the Dome at the very least this season.
And I think their receiving core with Matthews and Duffy and Reese Bellin, that group's really good. And Kazmierzak had a great game and got the ball to those guys. So I think you see they're 0-2, but they're not really 0-2. You know what I mean? They're going to be a really tough team down the road. And I think when you look at it, Westfield lost quite a bit from last year. We don't know for sure. HSC and Fishers will find out about as the year goes along. But on the north side of that bracket, I still think Carmel's probably the team to beat.
Yeah, and speaking of Kaz, he set the school record, I think, for single-game passing yards, and just great. And they wanted to get more receivers involved than he did. Him and Reese Bellin, who you might remember last year, he had the Hail Mary pass to beat Detroit King. Just you could see that connection, and you could tell that they've been playing together for so long. So it's just that chemistry, and it's like when he got in trouble, he knew where to go, and Reese was open, he was able to get him the ball. So little things like that, I think you're really going to start to see more pronounced, like you said, as the season goes along here.
Absolutely.
Looking ahead to next week, we'll just throw it out to the both of you guys. What games, what sort of things are you looking for here as we round into week 3 of the high school football season?
Well, I'll be at LNLC, and I guess the narrative heading into that game is how does LN bounce back? Because that was losing to Whiteland was probably one of the more surprising results from week 2, and Montez Jones struggled a little bit with multiple interceptions. So I feel like for LN it might be important to go back to the basics and run Richardson and really establish that run. When you're facing a triple option team like Whiteland, time of possession and kind of gets involved, and if you're playing from behind, you worry because those possessions become limited if they're moving the ball on the ground like that with success. So obviously LC, maybe if they can establish a run, that would be important, but I think it would be important for LN to return to the basics, maybe take some of that pressure off of Montez Jones, especially coming off a really poor performance. So but then you have the rivalry aspect. There's going to be emotions and things like that. So I would imagine Montez Jones might want to prove that he can erase that kind of performance and just play better. So I'm really interested to see how you work through all those dynamics for an LN team that has to be a little surprised by that performance last week.
And that's a rematch of last year's sectional championship when LN won for the first time in 31 years. And LC, felt like, all right, we're 4-7, we're making strides because they were 0-10 the year before that. And they have a lot of those same guys back. And I know sitting there 0-2 is not what they expected, but they played a couple of really good teams, obviously, in HSC and Westfield.
Definitely.
Kyle, what are you looking forward to this week?
Well, it's not quite we had a lot of great matchups last week. We don't quite have that this week, but I'll be at one of them. Akeem said he'll be at the LNLC game. I'll be at Chittard at Roncalli, which always a big rivalry game. Should be a great crowd. And we'll kind of see what, these teams are now in different classes, so there's no potential for a rematch. Chittard's in 3A now, and Roncalli, of course, we mentioned 4A, how tough it is with New Pal and what they're doing and that sort of thing. So we'll see. Roncalli is really good up front, and they have run the ball really well. Luke Hansen has had 2 monster games so far. And really, I was impressed, last week. It was 0-0 at halftime with Franklin Central, but they held Franklin Central to, I think, 75 yards of total offense.
Wow.
So that kind of shows you what they're capable of defensively, too. So, I'll be curious if can Chittard kind of get their ground game. They like to run, but they have a quarterback, Van Vliet, who he started 2 years at Richmond, transferred, and played kind of a backup role last year for Chittard, and now he's starting to be able to throw the ball pretty well for that team too. So can they score some? They're gonna have to score some points, I think, to obviously obvious statement of the week to beat Roncalli, but you know what I mean. They got to put some some offense, some drives together, and try to keep Luke Hansen that offensive line off the field as much as they can. So great matchup, should be a fun. I think I covered that game 2 years ago, and it was a lot of fun. Great crowd and 2 of the better programs, obviously, in the state. So going head to head, so that should be a lot of fun. And I probably will, I think Roncalli would probably win that game, but I certainly wouldn't put it past Chittard either.
And afterwards, so we don't forget, you'll have a Twitter Spaces again this week.
Yeah, we'll do that. Hopefully, you guys can come on there too, and that's been kind of a fun edition. I think we had, about 1,300 people ended up chiming, whether the replay or the live. So yeah, I don't know if that's good or bad, but that
seems good.
It seems good. So I don't know. It's fun. It's kind of like a radio show post game, just kind of bouncing around and talking about games and whatnot. So it's been a fun edition.
Absolutely. So next, I guess we have to address the picks. impressive. Akeem Glaspie last year, you may remember, started out like 0-50.
I don't know if it was quite that bad, but
well, Akeem, ladies and gentlemen, has made a comeback this year. We have Kyle at 14-6, and young Akeem comes in at 13-7 after another strong Week 2 performance by Akeem. Strong by his standards, Kyle. We're massively disappointed in you. Might be swapping you out with Clark. Both went 6-4 last week, but Akeem is in the thick of things. Kyle, are you nervous?
I am definitely nervous. I am not performing up to standards at this time of the season. But last year Akeem helped me out. He was just throwing a bunch of picks out there, and like you said, he got in a huge hole. Which hey, I could just kind of put the backups in at that point and run the clock out.
Akeem, how are you feeling after this strong start? You don't seem like the kind of guy that's going to rest on your laurels. I think you're going to continue competing and grinding at practice.
No, I mean I'm coming for Kyle's neck. Look, I'm coming for his neck. I'm going to call it now. At one point this season, I will overtake him. Now, will I finish with the lead? Maybe not, but I'm coming for him.
Clark, can we make sure that this is clipped off so Kyle can play this on replay and we can revisit this at the end of the year?
Will I regret this statement?
Yes, you will.
We're going to get in next week, and Kyle's just going to be sitting there listening to
it on
his phone.
Yeah. Right.
Yep. But anyway, we should get to this week's picks as Akeem tries to overtake the great one. Let's start off with Bishop Chatard at Roncalli. Kyle, we just talked about this one, a couple undefeated teams squaring off here. I'll let you take lead with who you think is going to come out with that one.
Yeah, I probably gave it away. I'm going to pick Roncalli, but I think it'll be a game that's, within a touchdown late into the fourth quarter, probably end up that close, I think. I think Chatard's probably better than maybe people realize going into this season, and they're kind of gearing up. 3A is going to be tough too, but they're probably feeling good. They're not in 4A with New Pal and Roncalli, and shoot, you go down the list. Mount Vernon, Mooresville, 4A is just absolutely loaded this year, but I'll take Roncalli.
Akeem, who are you going with in that one?
I'm going with Roncalli as well. I mean, I guess I'm kind of a sucker for talented offensive lines, and Roncalli also has a very good offensive line, so that allows you to establish the run and kind of control the pace of the game if you're controlling the line of scrimmage. So I think Roncalli should be able to do that against Chatard, so I'm taking Roncalli.
Center Grove puts its 30-game win streak on the line at Louisville Trinity. Trinity beat Carmel week 1. They lost last week to a team in state. Akeem, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell when you're just playing the results from the Trinity team. I mean, playing the results, I'm taking Louisville.
Wow, so you think the win streak's going to come to an end?
Yes.
Kyle, will we still count the win streak because it's an out-of-state loss? How does that work here?
They'll count it as a loss, but yeah, I'm taking Center Grove, and I think Akeem probably is picking the favorite, I would say, in this game, but I just feel like Center Grove, they'll go down there, and I think it'll be a tough game, and to me it'll be, because you saw them last week. I mean, they gave up a lot of passing yards, so I'm kind of curious how that plays itself out. But they used Jalen Thomason at running back last week, which was with Drew Weed out. I thought was an interesting move, and he did really well. So I'm going to say they're going to rely on their ground game, pound it out, keep that winning streak going, and then we'll find out. They're going to run into some more tough teams down the road.
Running game looked really good, and then Tyler Cherry too. I mean, not for nothing. He was putting some really good passes on there, so that'll definitely be a fun game to watch. Heritage Christian at Guerin Catholic, another couple 2-0 teams putting their undefeated records on the line. Kyle,
I'm really liking what I'm seeing out of Guerin so far this year, and this will be a great matchup of quarterbacks. Ryan Zimmerman for Guerin has put up monster numbers through 2 weeks. They beat Lafayette Central Catholic 47-10 last week, and that was a team that was really good last year, obviously, and it was always good. And then Kyle Antone from Heritage Christian, he's throwing for all kinds. I think he's got 9 touchdown passes already this season. So 2 of the best quarterbacks. I'm going to take Guerin, I think, in what could be a very fun, entertaining, high-scoring game.
Akeem?
I'm also going to go with Guerin.
We're here right now, Decatur Central, and on Friday they will have Whiteland 2-0 here.
Yeah, like I said, Whiteland with a big win over LN last week, the triple option attack going against Decatur's spread kind of attack. I think when you're running a triple option, that's going to be the hardest thing to stop because you have to be so disciplined. So I think Whiteland's going to continue to roll. I'm going Whiteland.
Yeah, I think that's probably the smart pick. But maybe I'm not smart. I'm going to take Decatur to bounce back from last week's game. I think they're going to be energized and ready, and in a conference game, I think it'll be a close game. I'll go with maybe a slight upset and take Decatur to win at home.
Fishers is hosting Noblesville next week. Kyle?
Yeah, again, this should be a fun game. I think are you going to this game, Brian?
That's my
game.
Game.
That'll be 2-0 teams, and I think the thing for Noblesville, they started last year, and I remember writing a story, going up there, and they hadn't started 2-0 in a while, started 2-0, and then kind of things kind of got unraveled a bit for them. So, can they keep this together? They run a kind of a different, and you'll see it Friday, but it's sort of a 11 guys in a phone booth type of an offense, and they love to run the ball, and they have a huge offensive line. So, and all that said, I'll take Fishers to win. But I think that, again, this is going to be a really good game. Fishers has been able to run the ball, came back and beat Pike last week, 28-17. In a good game. I think this is another, Fishers barely beat Noblesville last year, and I think Noblesville's better, but I'll take Fishers to win.
I agree. I mean, yeah, kind of two interesting running offenses there with Fishers with their two-headed running attack. I'm going to go Fishers.
Akeem, we got Greenfield Central at Mount Vernon. The defending state champions are 0-2 on the year. Greenfield Central comes in at 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone would have imagined that Mount Vernon would be 0-2 right now. I would imagine there's kind of this is a turning point in their season. If no one wants to start 0-3, just maybe they're feeling some pressure right now, but I think they'll come out and play better because, again, they have a lot of talent on that team with Bridenthal there at quarterback. So I think they're going to get their first win of the season.
Yeah, I think, again, I had a chance for a different story, but I was out talking to Greenfield Central coach Travis Nolting yesterday quite a bit, just kind of just talking, and they're feeling good about where their program's headed. And I think this will be a really good game, and I'm actually going to take Greenfield Central to win this game. Again, it's two teams that down the road could play each other in Class 4A. It's a conference game, and I think Akeem's right. I think Mount Vernon's going to come out very hungry. I know they had a chance to beat Franklin last week, and they kind of ran out of time at the end of the game, didn't get a field goal off that they could have had there late, and a frustrating loss against what I think is a really good Franklin team. But Greenfield Central has been throwing the ball a little bit more. They run more of like a flex bone offense, but they have a sophomore quarterback who's been able to throw some. So, again, probably taking a little bit of an upset here, and I may pay for this in our picks, but I'll take Greenfield to win.
Lawrence North at Lawrence Central. That's the game that Akeem has. Kyle, what's your read on this one?
I'm curious. The way Whiteland kind of shoved it down their throats with the running game, more than 300 yards of offense, kind of leads me to want to take LC in this game. And I think LC, I watched a little bit of their game against Westfield, and they hung in there with them. It was 42-28. So, a couple plays here and there hurt them. I think LC is going to be motivated. I think both teams will be. This is always like a fun rivalry type of game. But I'll take LC to win in a close one.
I think I kind of tipped my hand earlier with just kind of expecting a bounce-back performance from LN, just kind of, again, coming off that loss. I'm going LN.
Zionsville at Westfield. Westfield 1-1 on the year. Zionsville's 2-0. Akeem?
Yeah, I was able to see Westfield in week one. I really like the talent that they have. Their skill players are really explosive there with Williams at running back and Ambrolis at wide receiver. And Cole Ballard there was some miscommunication there, some kind of early season mistakes that I feel like they were able to work out in week two. So I'm going to go Westfield.
I'm going to agree. I think Westfield's going to be one of those teams. You can admit they're going to get better as the year goes on. I think Zionsville's a good team too. I actually put them in our power rankings this week at number 10 in 6A. But I think Westfield, they're in all areas are just going to get better and better as they get a little bit more experience. And we know what they've done the last couple of years, kind of trending well late into the season. So I'm going to pick the Shamrocks to win.
Moving down to one of the small classes, Lutheran 2-0 at Triton Central 2-0. Kyle?
Yeah, I'm going to take Lutheran there. Again, this has been a good rivalry in a conference, another big conference game. I think you kind of throw out the Lutheran did beat Ritter handily last week, but this will be a much tougher game, and that game's at Triton, right? So it'll be played on Triton's home field, and that will matter, I think, certainly. But I just think Lutheran's. People kind of look at, they lost Montez Clay, graduated from that team last year, but they had a lot of guys coming back who were part of that state championship team. So I'll take the Saints again, and they haven't lost a conference game, I think, now going on 2 years. So I'll take them to win a close one.
Yeah, I think throughout the history of the show, I don't think I've ever picked against Lutheran. Montez Clay was one of my favorite players to watch. Even without him, I think they continue rolling. Picking Lutheran.
Lutheran and Speedway are Akeem's two schools.
Biased.
Clearly. We're kidding, to be clear, sort of.
Yeah.
Akeem, we're going to close this out here. We have Centerville at Park Tudor.
Yeah, I believe Kyle was able to get out to Park Tudor last year and kind of talk about the improvements and the building that they're doing there. And it's at 2-0 right now. It seems like that program and culture building is paying off and showing dividends. So I think Park Tudor can continue rolling and move to 3-0.
I'm going to agree with that, and I think this will be a big win for Park Tudor's program. Centerville has been a really good team, and I'm sure they'll be tough again. But Spencer Somerville, the coach there, has done a great job in building that program from, having a few years ago to have to cancel games because of numbers of players. So, that's not a problem now, and I think they're ranked third in the state going into this week. So I think they're definitely trending in the right direction.
Good stuff, good stuff. All right, boys, so before we get out of here, Akeem, I'll let you start. What do you have coming up this week?
Actually, me and Kyle are working on a story about 3-sport athletes. I was actually able to talk to Hogan Denny and his dad yesterday. I mean, Hogan's an interesting case because he comes from a family of multi-sport athletes. His sister was a multi-sport athlete. She's a sprinter at IUPUI now, and he has 2 younger brothers that are also 3-sport athletes. So in the Denny household, you're not going to specialize. They really believe on playing multiple sports, and some other people I'm going to talk to. And it's interesting, and kind of because I cover baseball, and Hogan's committed to IU to play baseball, but he doesn't believe in specialization. Especially when it comes to baseball, they think you need to play baseball year-round and showcase and do all that stuff. But him and his family, they like the fact that he can do multiple things. So that's kind of an interesting thing and something that you don't really see nowadays. So we're just kind of talking to them and kind of seeing where they're coming from and how difficult it is to juggle 3 sports at a high level.
That's interesting. They still push specialization in baseball. They don't encourage kids to work some other muscle groups or reduce the strain on their shoulders.
I mean, especially when it comes to pitching, no. I mean, it seems like those guys are always training year round. They're in the wintertime. You'll see them, with the track man recording their velos and the spin rates and everything. And then, you see a lot of elbow injuries too. So maybe specialization for baseball isn't good, but I don't know. Again, talking to Hogan, they don't believe in that, and they think playing more sports will keep you healthy. And I know some college coaches agree with that. And even going back last week to Max Clark, talking to him, Greg was able to talk to him last week as well. He's playing football. He has millions of dollars that he could be kind of are in limbo if he can stay healthy or risk injury, and he's willing to do that because he loves playing football. So it's interesting to see these kids that are not specializing. That's kind of rare to see, and it's interesting.
Is it tough for you guys to find kids who weren't specializing? Did you have to hunt?
Well, I don't know how interesting this is, but I just kind of sent something out, and this is a football-based story, and there's other kids, girls probably, who do 3 sports too, but this is a football season, so we're just kind of focusing on kids who play football and then do other sports. But Akeem mentioned, and it wasn't, it's interesting to see, some of the bigger schools didn't have really any, the 6A. Some do, some, and there's some, football, wrestling, track, combos. There are some football, basketball, baseball, not that many, but Eli Bridenthal from Mount Vernon's one I talked to, and Akeem knows him. I was a really good baseball player, but he's played, 3 all the way through, and it's kind of like Denny, he just feels like that I don't want to give up that opportunity to help my basketball team, my community, in those other sports, and I did, it is interesting, and I think we'll find this out once people read the story. It's like you have to weigh what do you give up maybe in the off season or making you better for what may be your number 1 sport, and I think that's kind of an interesting balance too. But these kids are good enough, in football you don't have to do a whole lot of skill work and stuff. It's more about kind of lifting and being there and doing stuff in the summer, obviously, with the team. But the bigger school you get, and there's not all these athletes like Bridenthal or Denny either. So some kids have to choose, I may have to do this in order to make the team, So there's some of that too. I think that's interesting, and we haven't written it all yet or even reported it all yet, but that'll be out I think next Wednesday maybe, so people can look for that.
Good stuff. Kyle, what other stories you have coming for us this week?
I've got a story actually tomorrow on Mike Brevard, the Pike football coach who went from basically being homeless to coaching at Pike, and he went to Ben Davis. He came from Virginia, and there's somebody really, and I won't give away too much, but somebody really important in his life who teaches at Ben Davis that helped him get there, and sort of wrote about their connection and also the role his mom played, and just really cool. He got hired at 29 to be the Pike football coach, a 6A program in Indiana. So he goes from being homeless at 16, living in family shelters, to this. And he kind of mentioned, I've got kids on my team who say they came from nothing. I came from the bottom, and that I think is something great. He can kind of, be a big brother figure or father figure to his team in a lot of ways, because of his background. He's a very impressive guy to talk to, and so yeah, I think that'll be out Wednesday morning. I think this will air Wednesday, so it should be out by now.
Awesome. On the girls' side, we'll have a girls' soccer feature, a girls' volleyball feature from tonight, and then we have some softball. We have a little bit of everything. So just keep an eye out on that. Some of it will be up by the time you watch this. Some of it won't. Who knows? Akeem, any parting words or trash talk or anything like that before we get out of here?
No, I think I've already awakened a sleeping giant, so I'm a little worried, a little scared right now.
We could come back next week, and Akeem could be up by like 4 games. Because I kind of went for some upsets this week, so let's see what happens.
Kyle's taking a gamble. Akeem's hunting him down. We'll see what happens. It's going to be fun to watch. And we thank you all so much for watching. We thank Clark for helping us get us on and off the air, and Decatur Central for hosting us this wonderful facility. We'll talk to you all next Wednesday.